let's talk about a skill that's quietly becoming a genuine superpower in today's world: asking really, really good questions. In a world where we're just drowning in answers, it's the quality of our questions that's starting to make all the difference. And hey, don't just take my word for it. Listen to Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA. He said that his job has basically transformed. He now spends his days asking questions, not just dishing out answers. It's his way of pushing his team to explore things they hadn't even thought to explore. So, what's going on here? Why this massive shift? Well, the short answer is AI. We've totally flipped the script. We used to live in a world where having the right answer in your head was what made you valuable. Now, it's all about crafting the right question, the perfect prompt to unlock the information. What you know matters less than what you're curious enough to ask. And this has completely changed the game for anyone in a leadership role. Citi's CEO Jane Fraser puts it perfectly. She says leadership isn't about being the one person at the top with all the solutions anymore. It's about figuring out how to unleash the genius that's already in your team. And you do that by asking the questions that ignite their creativity. Okay, so if asking questions is our new superpower, where do we even begin? What should we be asking? Well, there's a really useful framework that breaks it down into 5 key areas, or domains. But before we get to the fancy stuff, let's just cover the basics. A great question doesn't have to be some super complex riddle. It just needs to be clear, it needs to be relevant to the situation, and it needs to be constructive. It should build things up, not tear them down. And most of the time, it should be open-ended. You want to start a conversation, not just get a yes or a no. All right, here's the toolkit: investigative, speculative, productive, interpretive, and subjective. The best way to think about these is like 5 different lenses. You can pick up each one to look at a problem or a decision from a totally different and totally critical angle. First up, we have investigative questions. These are all about asking what's really known here. They're designed to make us challenge our assumptions, dig for the real root cause of an issue, and make sure we're actually solving the right problem. And the cost of not investigating, it can be huge. Just look at the French rail operator in 2014. They made a €50 million mistake by ordering trains that were literally too wide to fit into 1,300 stations. Why? Because nobody asked the simple investigative question, hey, have we actually checked the platform measurements at all the stations? Next up, we've got speculative questions. These are the big what-ifs. This is where innovation lives. These questions are all about challenging the way things are and imagining entirely new possibilities, often by just reframing the problem itself. And you can spark this kind of thinking with some really simple phrases. Kicking off a sentence with "how might we?" or "what if?" is an incredibly powerful way to get a team to break past those mental barriers and start getting creative. Okay, our third domain is all about grounding us in reality. These are productive questions, and they ask, now what? Because let's be honest, a brilliant idea is pretty useless if you can't actually execute it. These questions make you face the practical stuff. Do we have the right people, the money, the time to actually make this happen? Lego learned this lesson the hard way. Back in 2003, they were on a roll, launching a ton of new products. But they forgot to ask the productive questions about their own capacity to handle it all. The result? Record losses. They simply stretched themselves too thin. Fourth, we have the interpretive domain. This one is all about the so what. This is such a crucial step. You've gathered all this data, you've done the analysis, now what does it all mean? These are the questions that help you connect the dots and turn all that raw information into something you can actually use. And a failure to interpret can be a total disaster. There's a story about a high-end car maker that got their hands on an early Tesla. You know what they focused on? A 7mm gap in the door. By obsessing over that tiny flaw, they failed to ask the big so what question, and they completely missed the revolution that was about to hit their entire industry. And finally, the fifth domain, subjective questions. This is about asking, what's going unsaid here? This is the human element, and it's so often overlooked. You can have the most perfect plan in the world, but if there's hidden tension or unspoken worries, it will fail. These questions get to the heart of the emotional dynamics that often decide everything. Asking something as simple as, how do you really feel about this, can be a game changer. It creates what's called psychological safety. It tells your team that you care more about real alignment than just having everyone nodding along.
That's how you uncover the issues people are too afraid to bring up.
Okay, so we've covered what to ask, but that's really only half the battle. How you ask is just as important. It's what separates a pretty good question from one that can change the whole conversation. Let's get into the art of delivery.
It really boils down to four main things. First, be prepared. Know what you want to ask. Second, set the stage. Give a little context so people know where you're coming from. Third, and this is a big one, once you ask, shut up. Don't interrupt. And fourth, embrace the silence. That little pause after you ask gives people the space to actually think, and you'll almost always get a better answer.
And please remember this. Your tone might be more important than the actual words you use. Is your question coming from a place of genuine curiosity and a desire to help? Or does it feel like an interrogation, like you're trying to catch someone? A helpful tone invites people in, and an aggressive one shuts them right down.
All right, now let's turn the spotlight around, because the goal here isn't to become a master of every single type of question. It's really about becoming aware of your own tendencies. It's about finding your personal question mix. So just take a second and think about it. When you're faced with a problem, which of these 5 domains is your go-to? What's your default setting? Are you the person who's always digging for more facts, or are you the one constantly throwing out what-if ideas? Most of us have 1 or 2 styles that we lean on pretty heavily, right? They're the ones that have worked for us in the past. But the danger is that over-relying on them creates massive blind spots. Just knowing your own habits is the first, most important step to asking a more balanced range of questions. And remember, you don't have to do this all by yourself. The goal is self-awareness, not solo mastery. Once you know your own blind spots, you can intentionally lean on people in your team who are naturally strong in those other areas. A leader's job isn't to ask every single question, but to make sure all 5 domains get covered by the team as a whole. So we'll leave you with this one final thought. In your work, in your current projects, maybe even in your life, what is the most important question that you or your team are not asking right now? Because finding that question, well, that could change absolutely everything.